This is Laurie Carney, and I'm Bill Grubb, and we're married to each other, and we're sitting here in beautiful Aspen, Colorado.
I came to Aspen in 1971 as a 14-year-old student, and at that point the dean at Juilliard was a man named Gordon Hardy, who was also the president and CEO of the music festival here. And so Gordon invited Miss DeLay to come out, and she brought all of her students out with her. And so I've been here every summer since then. The people who teach here at the festival we've known since we were first out here. Many of the people who were teaching here were students when I was first a student here. You know, your first summer here was 75.
Right, I'm a newcomer.
A newcomer, yeah.
And Gordon still, to this day, lives in Aspen. He's 90.
I think he's 92.
92 years old. Still comes occasionally to concerts. He is a great guy. And he was very, very supportive of young musicians at Juilliard at that time. And he would invite us to come and just kind of join the faculty at the Aspen Music Festival. And I remember I got paid $300 my first summer here, for the whole summer, and I was so happy.
Playing in Aspen for the first time was really a big, big deal. I mean, that was, you really felt like you'd arrived.
It's the Aspen idea. That's what it is, having these beautiful mountains and the music. And the students are wonderful too, and the students come from all over the world. You have a quartet right now?
I'm coaching them later this afternoon, and they're called the Chimeng Quartet, and two of them are from Beijing and the other two are from Shanghai. And we got here, the quartet's been here for 2 weeks, and they've been calling us up, each and every one of us, every day. Today I think they had 3 lessons with 3 of us. So, you know, they're just soaking up as much information as they possibly can. And if a student keeps calling you and says, "Can I have another lesson today?" you say, "Of course you can." And even though we don't have kids, our lifestyle is so crazy with all the traveling we do and concertizing and stuff. We teach a lot, and so you know, you get very involved in your students' lives.
That's right.
And they become, after they've long since graduated, they still stay in touch, and they still, you know, 20 years after they've graduated, they're still calling you up to ask your advice.
Oh, absolutely. But the very first teacher you have is the most important teacher. It's not when you get to the conservatory. It's those first literally year or 2 that are the most important.
It's laying the basic foundation. And my father was very strict and made me practice a lot. And I remember the first summer I went to a place called Meadowmount, which is in upstate New York, and you were required to practice 5 hours every single day except Sunday. You know, for an 11-year-old, that's hard. That's really hard. But then you see the results, you see that it pays off, and you know, that makes a big, big difference. My father especially knew Miss DeLay really well when they were both students at Juilliard. And so I had started playing piano when I was about 4, and I kept pushing my parents to give me a violin. Finally, they got tired of my pushing, and so my dad started teaching me.
I think what happens is that for many kids who are in musical families, they hear the music around them all the time. And then they start to say, well, when can I do this? And then the parents say, oh, not yet. And so then when you first get an instrument and the parent begins to teach you, it's something you want. It's not like one day the parent arrives home and says, you're going to play the violin.
Yeah.
My parents are both musicians. My dad is, like me, a cellist, and my mom is a harpist and a pianist. And they actually met in the 1940s when they were both students at the Eastman School of Music in Rochester, New York. And I actually went to Eastman for 3 years before coming to Juilliard.
And what was that like being at Juilliard?
Oh.
Going to New York City.
I'm getting nervous just thinking about it. I'll tell you honestly, a lot of people went to Juilliard and were not happy there because it's a very, very competitive school. And to this day, Laurie tells me, and she'll correct me if this is not true, that when she goes in the building, in the lobby of Juilliard, her stomach starts to tighten up right away. It's not like schools now where they try to help you and nurture you and they want you to be happy in school. You just came to the building and you went to your classes and had your lessons, and at the end you got out and you took auditions and hopefully you won one and you got a position and you went on and had a life as a professional musician. In those days there was no dormitory,
That's right.
There was no personal life interaction with the students for the most part, and so you had to find your own place to live in New York City, which was hard. I mean, it's a hard place to come when you're just a teenager.
I went to Juilliard in the college division at 15. I couldn't drive a car in that first year. I mean, it was sort of demoralizing to be a college student, and my dad drove me to school.
At the same time, I loved Juilliard. I had a great time there. And I had a great time because the level was so much higher than any place I had ever been, the level of the students. I found that you could learn as much from the students as you could learn from the teachers there. And there was this constant activity of students kind of competing, but also helping each other. I'll tell you something. There comes a moment, I think, for every kid who's studying a musical instrument when they decide yes or no. And there comes a moment, I remember for me, when I first heard a particular piece of music, and it was a piece by Franz Schubert. Yeah. And it was a quintet for string quartet, 4 people, plus an extra cello. And I remember in the first movement, there is the most gloriously beautiful theme. It sounded like it was perfect. It couldn't, like it had just become like fallen out of the sky, not created by a human being, but just, you know, created somehow. I decided that's what I'm going to do. And once you decide that, you just do it. And I also thought, what else can I do? Nothing. Nothing.
Coming to Aspen was certainly life-changing when I was 14. But the year before, there was something in New York called the New York String Orchestra. I remember going to the audition. Even the age limit was 15 to 22, and I was 13. And I got accepted. And I remember Felix Gallimir, who was also a great Austrian Viennese violinist and teacher, called up my parents and said, we really want her to come, but she's 2 years younger than everybody else. Are you okay with her living in a hotel in New York City for 2 weeks? And my parents said, sure, no problem.
Can you come now?
So I went, and it really changed my life because it was all day music. You know, you got up in the morning and there were orchestra rehearsals and there was chamber music and there was these concerts at Carnegie Hall, and then there were parties every night at someone's apartment in New York City, and so it was sort of
you were living the life of a musician.
Yeah,
in New York City,
and doing it 16 hours a day for a 10-day period of time.
You're expected as a kid to practice a certain number of hours, and we tell our students this all the time. If you don't put in the time, it's really hard to get good. And so, you know, it's either practice or not be good.
I think by the time I was maybe 16, or maybe younger than that, but I knew that I wanted to play in a quartet. And luckily, Miss DeLay really supported that.
I think most musicians would never say, I have a particular piece. I think that certain musicians are drawn toward a certain kind of music. I feel more drawn naturally toward romantic music. It just suits the way I play and the way I like to sound on the cello.
I've had my violin, a Carlo Tononi, for 25 years, and it's made in Venice in 1720. It's a beautiful example of his work. I'm very lucky to have it, and I to this day remember the day that I first saw it and first played on it, and was lucky enough to be able to buy it.
I can't imagine being a musician and not being married to somebody who isn't a musician.
It would never work.
It would never work.
I was going to ask you what it's like being married to a cellist.
Oh.
Better than being married to a violinist, I'll tell you that. I would never marry another violinist. I don't know, I think that it would be inherently a little competitive. Violinists tend to be a little more high-strung, I think, than cellists.
As a kid, being totally naive about the profession I was going into. Now I know a lot about the profession. If I really knew about the profession, I would think, well, you know, accounting would be a better thing to go into. Goodbye from the Aspen Music Festival. Come and visit us.